this presentation, more correct terminology which we are using nowadays is menstrual disorders. Previously, the name of this problem or disorder was abnormal uterine bleeding, but now we are doing the whole topic with the menstrual disorders. Each one of the part of the menstrual disorders would be the abnormal uterine bleeding. I will discuss all the disorders of menstruation, and one of the disorder which would be the abnormal uterine bleeding would be included in it. Okay, we know आपने तो वही लगा दी. हाँ, say fine. Okay, we know that normal menstruation. First of all, what is normal menstruation? And the normal cycle length is from 21 days to 35 days. Average is 28 days. The minimum shortest menstrual cycle is 21 days, and the maximum longest cycle of menstruation is 35 days. If the cycle is lesser than 21 days, the cycle is called polymenorrhea. Means we are having cycles more than which are to be in the 1 year of life. And when the cycle is shortest, less than 21 days, then it will be the problem will be the polymenorrhea. But when the cycle is more than 35 days, then it means we are facing less year. Annually, we are having less cycles, and then this is called the oligomenorrhea. So one condition which is cycles more than 35 days is oligomenorrhea, and when the cycles are shortest, less than 21 days, the problem is polymenorrhea. Usually duration of the cycle is 3 to 8 days. Even cycle of 2 days is considered normal. As far as the flow of the cycle during the period is normal. But if it is just spotting for 2 days, just client or the person which is coming to us is saying that she is unable to soak even 1 pad per day, then this will be the problem. Otherwise, 2 to 3 days cycle with the flow, average flow is considered normal. Blood loss. Blood loss cannot be measured, but usually it is given, should be less than 80 ml. When it is more than 80 ml, it is called menorrhagia. Average is 35 ml. Now, mechanism of normal menstruation. What happens during menstruation? These are the changes which occurs in the endometrium. Means what happens? There is vasoconstriction of spiral arterioles. These are the arterioles which are entering into the myometrium. Damage to the walls of spiral arterioles, necrosis of the superficial endometrium. This is the whole mechanism which occurs when there is menstruation. That is damage to the walls, vasoconstriction, and necrosis or the sloughing of the superficial endometrium. This leads to menstruation. Now, what happens when the cycles are abnormal? First of all, I would like to give you the definitions of the menstrual disorders, and which is previously abnormal uterine bleeding, or nowadays the commonest is HMB. HMB is heavy menstrual blood loss. IMB, intermenstrual blood loss. PCB, postcoital bleeding. PMB, postmenopausal bleeding. For which once terminology has been given, which is called PALM. PALM, when there is a problem in the structure, when the causes of these HMB, IMB, postcoital bleeding, postmenopausal bleeding, and bleeding of endometrial origin. BEO is bleeding of the endometrial origin, which occurs, which is actually the dysfunctional uterine bleeding or abnormal uterine bleeding. BEO, bleeding of endometrial, and it is actually the diagnosis of exclusion. When we do not found any cause and we found that there is abnormal bleeding, then we name it as bleeding from of endometrial origin. It is the term which has replaced the term of dysfunctional uterine bleeding. Rather, more correct term is bleeding of endometrial origin. This is because of the disorders of prostaglandins production of the endometrium. In the endometrium, we know that there is a production of prostaglandins I2 and E2. That is, one is for the constriction and one is for the dilatation. But when there is abnormal balance of the constriction and dilatation, then there will be endometrial origin bleeding, which is called bleeding of endometrial origin. How we find out the causes of these HMB, IMB, PCB, PMB, and bleeding of endometrial origin? We classify it into two ways. First classification is on the basis of structural causes. One is the what happened? Structural causes, for which the term is given PALM. P for polyp, A for adenomyosis, L for leiomyoma, and M for malignancy. Means there is some structural problem. Either there is some polyp, there is a leiomyoma or fibroid, there is either adenomyosis, which is actually the menstrual bleeding into the myometrium, and or PALM. PALM, polyp, adenomyosis, leiomyoma, and malignancy. Then second classification is Quine. Is when there is no structural cause and we label the cause either hormonal cause or some other causes which are maybe iatrogenic or thyroid problem. So what is the terminology? Actually, C for coagulopathy, ovulatory causes, endometrial causes, iatrogenic, and not classified classes. So though there is two ways of classification: PALM classification for structural causes, Quine classification when the causes are either hormonal or some other causes. Now HMB. This is the commonest problem. This is the actually we are using nowadays, which we are calling at HMB or heavy menstrual blood loss, because most of 70% of cases are because of this heavy menstrual blood loss. It is the older term for this heavy menstrual blood loss was menorrhagia. Menorrhagia, we know that the normal blood flow, as we heard and we have found, is less than 80 ml and average is 35. So when there is a blood loss of more than 80 ml, but we do not measure it. We actually decide this HMB on the patient's perception, or more reliable is the hemoglobin levels. When we found that the patient is clinically anemic, her hemoglobin levels are low, and it means the patient, whatever she is saying that she is bleeding more than normal, means she is right. Because patient's perception, even when the hemoglobin is normal, patient's perception is also very important, that she is assuming that she is bleeding more than normal. 20 to 30% of cases are in the reproductive age group. So as we know that the reproductive reasons are very less common reasons in the reproductive age. This is very important, as we know when we take the history of patient and we ask age of the patient, and this is very important that when we come to know that the patient is in the reproductive age, the cause is very clearly understandable, that might be having leiomyoma or adenomyosis. Then other less common causes which we can come in classification, that is could be some coagulation disorders, pelvic inflammatory disease. On three tools. One is the history, second is the examination, and the third is the investigations, labs. So for what questions should we ask when the patient is coming to us with the heavy menstrual blood loss. First of all, we have to find out whether whatever she is saying is according to HMB. So length of time of problem, amount of blood loss, how we come to know the amount of blood loss. This is very important questions in which we have to ask how many pads she is using per day, and we should ask the soakage of the pads. Some women use only half soaked pads and they discard it, and some use the pads with full soakage. So this is also a very important question, whether they are soaking the whole pad or they are soaking the partial pad. Number of pads, number of clots, small clots, size of clots, small clots, large clots, because we know that in the menstruation, in the menstrual blood, there is no clot, because coagulation system of the fibrin is like that there is only blood loss. One there is clotting system is there when there are small or large clots. It means coagulation system has crossed the limit, and then now the coagulation has been started. So these are the very important questions. Now, relationship with sex, menstrual cycle, last menstrual period, postmenopausal bleeding. This is all when we say relationship with sex means we want to know is there any postcoital bleeding, because postcoital bleeding is very important. When it is there, more causes in the cervix. And previously the cycle length was, what was the length of the cycle, last menstrual period is also very important. When we know that last menstrual this one and she is coming to us in this period, then we can come to know the length of the cycle. Heavy menstrual blood, as we have asked that number of sanitary pads, tampons, frequency to change pads, presence of clots, flooding, spillover, work restriction, short of breath. Short of breath is also very important because it means she is also anemic, and that's why she is now become having symptoms of anemia. What symptoms she can have? She can have irregular bleeding. She can have intermenstrual bleeding. She can have postcoital bleeding, which is because usually postcoital bleeding, either endometrial or cervical polyp, cervical or other abnormality, because when there is a postcoital bleeding, then the cause is either in the form of some polyp which is protruding through the cervical os, and by the coitus it is bleeding, or some problem like cervicitis, infection in the cervix, that can in the form of a postcoital bleeding. Other questions could be like coagulation disorders like excessive bruising, bleeding from other sides, history of in the previous delivery there is a history of postpartum hemorrhage, family history of bleeding disorders, bleeding when there is a tooth extraction, and heavy bleeding when there is any problem like IV cannulation and anything. 20% cases of HMB can have one of the reason which is in these questions. So these questions, apart from asking amount of bleeding, these questions to exclude the other causes from leiomyoma or adenomyosis, these questions are very important to be asked. These are very important part of our history, that the previous history of bleeding, coagulation disorder history, family history, postcoital bleeding, and irregular bleeding. Irregular bleeding in HMB, there is usually no irregular bleeding. Unusual vaginal discharge, if there is also unusual vaginal discharge, dirty discharge, blood stained vaginal discharge, foul smelling vaginal discharge, then and there is a pain in the lower abdomen, there is a dysmenorrhea, dyspareunia, then it could be because of the pelvic inflammatory disease. And sometimes because of presence of large masses like fibroid, there may be pressure symptoms. That is like urinary symptoms, presence of mass in the abdomen, abdominal fullness, increase in size of abdomen, feeling of some mass in the abdomen because of the presence of leiomyoma or fibroid, and this leads to some pressure symptom. And sometimes, which is not thyroid then we have to ask, when we do not found anything in these questions, then we have to look into thyroid causes. In the thyroid causes, the changes which are possible changes are the weight changes, if she is losing weight or if she is gaining weight, because both hyper and hyperthyroid can have menstrual disorders. Skin changes, fatigue, early fatigability because of the hyperthyroidism. So when we found things in favor of thyroid disorders, then we go for the investigations regarding thyroid problem. Otherwise, in reproductive age group, thyroid disorders are usually not the recommended investigations. But we do not found features in favor of leiomyoma or adenomyosis, then we have to go and we found features in favor of thyroid disorders. Now, what are the investigations to be carried out? Full blood count, very important, because hemoglobin, hematocrit count means she is losing blood more than normal. If non-invasive ultrasound is very important for the presence of pelvic mass, for the presence of polyp, which is an endometrial outgrowth, or then if we do not found that, then we go for another investigations which requires coagulation screening, bleeding disorders screening, or coagulation screening. For pelvic inflammatory disease, high vaginal swab or endocervical swab. Then usually we do not perform hormonal investigations in the reproductive age group, because we know that most of the time these are not the cause. But when do not found on ultrasound any mass, endometrial polyp or adenomyosis, then we can have these investigations. Important of these are the thyroid investigations. Now, when the irregular bleeding, when there is a intermenstrual bleeding, when there is a postcoital bleeding, then we do require endometrial biopsy. Endometrial biopsy usually we recommend after, they are recommending it after 45 years of age, but minimum after 40, means before 40 we do not require endometrial biopsy. Nowadays we are doing it as outpatient procedure, and it is because of hysteroscopic guided endometrial biopsy is the gold standard, but Piper's method is also available, which is as outpatient. These are the investigations we do carry out in patients with more than 45 years of age. When there is a treatment failure, we have given drugs to the patient and patient is not responding to the treatment. When there is a presence of risk factors of endometrial or cervical cancers, and there is before doing some ablative procedures. When we do perform ablative procedure, which is the removal of endometrium for the treatment of menorrhagia or heavy menstrual blood loss, then it is very necessary to rule out endometrial cancer by endometrial biopsy. Endometrial biopsy as inpatient under general anesthesia if patient fails to tolerate, or if cervix needs to be dilated, or for treatment of the large polyp or submucosal fibroid. So usually we do perform it as outpatient, which is called Piper's biopsy. If hysteroscope is available, then it is well and good. Otherwise, even without hysteroscope. But under general anesthesia as inpatient, hysteroscope guided endometrial biopsy is gold standard, but as it is invasive, it requires anesthesia, it requires admission. So we do perform them only when there is a indication for this, and these are the indications: when there is a failure to treatment, if there is a cervix fails to dilate, and for the treatment of large polyp, endometrial cancer if we are considering in a post-menopausal patient, and sometimes for the submucosal fibroid or submucosal polyp. As I have already told you that thyroid investigation, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, is only performed when we found history in favor of thyroid disorders. Now, management. It depends on patient's preference, what she wants. If she wants to save her reproductive ability, then we have to give her drugs. So we do ask with the patient whether she can want to have treatment, medical treatment, surgical treatment, and we should tell all the risks and benefits of each option and her requirement. For example, if she wants also contraception, then we can give her drugs which are for the treatment of heavy menstrual blood loss, as well as at the same time these are drugs for the contraception. So these there will be double benefit to her. What are the drugs which can be given to her? Her previous uterine surgery. Previous uterine surgery is very important, because if we are suspecting to place intrauterine contraceptive device, then we have to be very careful for them. Now, out of hormonal therapy, drugs with the contraceptive requirement, the very important and very useful treatment is available nowadays, which is called LNG-IUS, means levonorgestrel intrauterine system. Levonorgestrel intrauterine system. This system releases progesterone into the uterus. And there are two types of levonorgestrel intrauterine systems are available. One is for the 5 year, which is called Mirena. This Mirena is for the 5 years, and it has total dose of levonorgestrel about 52 milligram, and it releases 20 microgram per day. While other is called Jadel. Jadel is the 13.5 milligram with the levonorgestrel, and this system is for the 3 years. So Mirena is for 5 years, Jadel is for 3 years. Mirena reduces the blood loss by 90% in 1 year. Highly effective method. It's an alternative to surgical management. Instead of doing hysterectomy, we can go for this method, in which intrauterine system, levonorgestrel system is very good. But it is not suitable if wishing to conceive. Then we want to have other drugs, because we cannot keep it in the uterus. Now, medical treatment. What medical treatment? Other are tranexamic acid. It's an antifibrinolytic agent that decreases the blood loss by 50%. It is the first line drug treatment, and it decreases the blood loss by 50%. Mefenamic acid. It is a prostaglandin synthetase inhibitor. It reduces the blood loss by 30%. Then one drug is GnRH agonist, acts on pituitary and decreases the estrogen release in results in amenorrhea. This is very important. Actually, this GnRH agonist, they continuously acts on the pituitary and finally exhausted the pituitary, and there is no more hormone from the pituitary to be released, and this finally results in amenorrhea. But it's used for only short period, because it can cause estrogen deficiency problems like osteoporosis. So we cannot use it for more than 6 months. To decrease it is also used for the reduction in the size of the fibroid. And it can be given before surgery when there is a large fibroid, so the size of the fibroid decrease, and we can perform the surgery easily. But one bad thing is that by using this drug, some of the small fibroids even disappear. And after surgery, when we have removed the large fibroid and we stop the drug, these small fibroids reappear and result in recurrence of the problem. In severe HMB, to gain the time to build hemoglobin. One of the good usage of this drug is that while we are building hemoglobin of the patient, then by that time we can reduce the blood loss by this drug. Surgical methods are the ablation of endometrium, hysterectomy, uterine artery embolization. If the family is complete, there are pressure symptoms, medical treatment failed, then we go for endometrial ablation. Endometrial ablation cannot be done in the uterus of more than 10 week size, and the fibroid should be less than 3 centimeter. Sufficient depth of endometrium ablation to prevent the regeneration of the basal endometrium. Transcervical resection of endometrium with first generation techniques with electrical diathermy or roller ball ablation have been replaced by second generation techniques. And these are the transcervical resection endometrium. Previously, there was first generation, which is electrical diathermy or roll ball ablation, but now we are having second generation techniques, which are much more easier and much more applicable. Thermal, which are thermal uterine balloon therapy or microwave ablation, microsulus, impedance control endometrial ablation. These are the second generation techniques which we can use, and by which we thermally destroy the layer of the endometrium up till the basal endometrium. After treatment, 40% cases becomes amenorrheic, 40% with reduced blood loss, and 20% have no effect. And these are the candidates for the hysterectomy next time. Surgical treatment. Hysterectomy means removal of uterus and the cervix. Sometimes we ask questions from the students, what is hysterectomy? They say removal of the uterus, tubes, and the cervix. Tubes are not involved in the hysterectomy. It is the removal of the body of the uterus and the cervix. When we remove the tubes also, then it is called bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy. Commonest surgical procedure in which we remove the uterus and cervix with or without ovaries. It can be performed abdominally, it can be performed vaginally. When there is a failed medical treatment, failed ablation treatment, then first line hysterectomy. And for the fibroid, when there is a large fibroid, because we know that for the ablation treatment, the size of the fibroid should be less than 3 centimeters. Then hysterectomy is performed. But when the patient is young, she wants to conceive and she wants to retain her fertility, then the myomectomy or transcervical resection of the fibroid. Uterine artery embolization by interventional radiologists. It is the embolization of the both uterine arteries. Cannula pass through the femoral artery into the uterine arteries. Bilateral is done and patient particles injected into the uterine artery. Those want to retain their fertility, they should be counseled because this fertility might be affected. Pregnancy reported can lead to abnormal placentation. If there is a pregnancy, then there is a risk of abnormal adherence of the placenta. Premature ovarian failure is possible. Now the lecture is over. Students, you want to ask some question? Hello?